Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Live Lab. We're so glad to see you all here for the first concert of the new year. Glad you braved the horrible, cold, wintry weather to come out to enjoy an evening of classical music with us. First, McMaster University recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who've made this concert series possible in memory of Carl Turkstra and his wife Kate, who just recently passed away. The Insight Foundation for the Arts is proud to present the 2022-2023 concert series. LiveLab also gratefully acknowledges McMaster University Alumni Association, TD Insurance, Long & McQuaid, and Judy Marcel's Real Estate for their generous support of this series. Okay, this evening we are pleased to present the Irish Trio with Canadian poet Don McKay as part of their Canadian tour. Celebrated for their imaginative programming and powerhouse performances, the Irish Trio presents the Blue chapter of their multi-year Project Earth, including stunning works by McKay and Juno-nominated composer and jazz pianist Florian Höfner. Project Earth strives to illuminate the impact of human behavior on the environment while recognizing the power of our collective imagination to create meaningful change. I just want to say after the first set, we'll have an intermission, about 15 minutes, followed by our usual science snapshot, which will be me tonight. I'll give a short talk about room acoustics and a demonstration of the acoustics of this space, the Live Lab. So please join me in welcoming the Irish Trio.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm just going to put my clarinet down so that I can talk more easily. Okay, so great to see all of you here. Thanks for joining us tonight in Hamilton. We also want to thank McMaster University and the Live Lab and everyone working here, so Dan and Hanny, Susan and Sally, for making this performance possible. They've been wonderful to work with, and we're just delighted to be here. So I'm Christine, the clarinetist. Here's Anna, Zoe, and Dawn. Thank you. And tonight we're going to be presenting Project Earth. So for the Irish Trio, Project Earth is a multi-year long-term project where we've been commissioning new composers and new poets to write and explore our complex relationship with nature, with the environment. So tonight we're going to do the first chapter of Project Earth, the Blue chapter, with all of the poetry written by Don McKay, who's one of Canada's great celebrated poets. And all of the music is by Florian Höfner, a jazz pianist and composer here in Canada and based in Newfoundland. So when we first started talking about this project and what we wanted to do, we commissioned Florian and Dawn to write a single piece. It was not going to be this huge project. It was a single piece called Bird Island Suite, which you'll hear in the second half. And it was so exciting for us to be working with poetry and also as classical musicians to be playing jazz and folk-inspired music that we said, okay, you're not done. We want a whole program. And so that's what you'll hear. So the first half actually came second, and Bird Island Suite at the end is what we started with. There's a green chapter in the works now, and that poet is Karen Soley, another one of Canada's great poets. And the composers are Sarah Slean, beloved Canadian singer-songwriter, and Andrew Downing, another cross-genre jazz musician. So keep an eye out for the green chapter. And now I'll hand it over to Dawn to introduce or to talk a little bit more about what you're going to hear now.
Right. Thank you, Christine. Thanks for coming. It was a great, well, it was a privilege, but also really aesthetically stretching to work with Florian Höfner and write poetry and music that were kind of in dialogue, but never collapse. So the poetry doesn't become libretto, and the music does not become accompaniment, you know? So they're always in this kind of dialogue. And it's a kind of, it was very interesting for me to do this, and very exciting. And work at Florian, excellent composer, who has just been nominated again for a Juno, right? This is second Juno nomination. Anyway, the first part, I'll introduce Bird Island Suite in a second after the intermission. The first part, what we're doing, the first piece is called Chorus of Wishes. And it comes about, this was partly, Florian said we should take on as an influence some of the minimalist music, such as you get Philip Glass or Steve Reich. So he already had that, of course, under his belt, but I listened to quite a lot of it. I hadn't been much familiar with before, and I realized when it came to that translating into poetry, it was chant, really. And it tended to, and we put that into the environmental focus, it became the sort of the vehicle for wishes, for hope. And the hope also in the form which recurs. So it comes back again and again. And you'll hear that recurrence in the poem, in the words, the wish that, the wish that. It's kind of an ecological wish list and kind of an ecological prayer. The form of this dialogic piece is, first of all, the band plays, and then I play, I sing. No, I don't. You'll be relieved to hear. I will talk. So we'll have music, poetry, music. It's a poetry sandwich, which is a technical term, right? Okay. Sometimes out of the blue, out of the whispering wind, out of the shadows that animate the forest, sometimes your mind will discover itself to be a part of wider mind. A piece, a mote, a bit, a note, a particle that for the moment moves in sync, a member of that wider mind. Maybe you say nature, maybe you say biosphere, maybe you say Nitasanan or Pachamama, a member now and not its master, not for now its steward, not for once its nemesis. And when that moment comes, out of the green, out of the wuthering wind, out of sunlit patches on the forest floor, it comes as a chorus of wishes, like a flock of sandpipers scurrying and feeding on a beach. The wish that the 10,000 things should sing and sign and scurry and jive and splice and clasp and link and send messages through pheromones, through fungal filaments, through snail mails, neurons, genes, and piss marks on the trees. The wish that the mist should seduce the headland and the waves persuade the cliff to break down into boulders, the boulders to cobbles, the cobbles to pebbles, the pebbles to the sand on the beach where the sandpipers scurry and feed, putting on weight for their long flight south to Patagonia. The wish that rivers should river, that ravens should rave and palaver and play and resist the powers that be. That bees should pollinate by accident and dance by design, that spruce, that larch, that birch, that fir all stay connected through their fungal party line, that its hyphae should hyphenate and its chanterelles sing their way up through the amniotic earth to be harvested by insects, connoisseurs, and slugs. The wish that death should have enough dominion to turn corpses into compost, but not enough for mass extermination. That it should dwell in our lives as absence, as air pockets in bird bones, or the little sister of St. Francis. The wish that calcium should build strong bones and teeth and shells and limestone and marble, that matter should mean mother and miracle and never mere. That islands, irises, eyeballs, bluebells, bluebirds, blue-eyed grass, that blue moons, blue whales, blue jeans, blue notes, bloopers, blues in the kitchen, blues in the bar, and the great blue heron unfurling from the marsh, gathering gravity in its immense embrace. I wish that whales should feed upon the krill and defecate great fecal plumes to fertilize the plankton that the krill then feed upon. That the whales should devour krill the way my great Aunt Lil devoured harlequin romance, and the sandpipers on the beach devour sandworms. That our minds devour the music that then occupies our minds, at home, at last, in wider mind, as bits, as parts, motes, particles, pulses, notes that move as members. Here we go, there we went, in sync.
Hello, we're back. I didn't get your mission yet. I was just dying. And
Yes, not to worry.
you know when you're in the audience and you have a tickle or like, you know, and you have to cough? It's so much worse when it's on stage. So I'm so sorry for my little attack there. She's alive. Here, I'll give you the mic.
Hello from me as well. I have an exciting announcement to make for all of you. This whole project, the Blue Chapter of Project Earth, was recently recorded and it's about to come out on an album. And we are very excited to release this album very soon. For those of you who would like to stay in touch and receive the occasional email from the Iris Trio once a year, please fill out business cards, which are at the front in intermission, with your name and email address, and we'd love to keep you posted about news and when the album will be out. And for those of you who do that, you will be able to participate in a drawing for one free CD after intermission. We have our first album, which has music by Mozart and Schumann and Kurtag, and a contemporary German composer. And we would like to draw a name out of a bowl and give you a free CD for those of you who fill out the business cards. We also will have a 15-minute intermission and the bar is open. We'll welcome you to enjoy that. And I'm probably forgetting something, so they're gonna prompt me and say it. And
No, that's good.
that's all from me. Thank
Hi.
you.
If you're really lucky in the draw, you get your name misread by Anna Petrova in a very, very interesting way. So you can go on with a new nickname for the rest of your lives. It's kind of fun being with this group. It's also like being kidnapped by the circus, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So, the second piece we're doing right now is called Kinds of Blue. Obviously, we riffed that off Miles Davis. It has 4 sections. The first one is a general just take on a celebration of blue itself. We live on the blue-green planet, and this is the blue chapter. So that's the first section. The last three are all sort of in the form of riddles. And they have the sort of, for this, for this, for this, for this, we love this blue object. And so if you get the riddle before the end, you get a free drink there. So you have to get all of them, though, before the end. So this has 4 parts. And again, it's in this structure, poetry, music, poetry, music, poetry, music. Kinds of blue. 1. Being blessed with atmosphere and oceans, earth composes blues in every hue, to every purpose. A blue to lift the heavy heart, and one to help it home. A blue for Monday, a blue for dusk, birds, blossoms, boys, berries, bruises, plus an array of blues for everyday domestic use. Always they call long distance, drawing us smoothly into elsewheres. No flags, no anthems. They easily elude capture by the Tories, the Virgin, and the cops, diving at once into the eye and out of sight to wink back at us from some primal puddle. One day, we will fade to gray or black, and blue has been both places and includes them the way a saxophone includes its drastic possibilities. Listen, it's been there. For their signature jeers and scolds, for their bold screw yous, and also for that little bale they sometimes hang like a hand-shan poem in the woods. For their sharp outlines in shifting hues, dusky, azure, drab, blue-black. For their corvid craft, mimicking their predators and confusing our cats. We cherish the blue jays. May their smart-ass wit forever vex the soundscape. For being lavish, outlandish, exotic, sexy, for making little habitable nooks in the rude rock beside the North Atlantic, for being the beauty queens of the bog and the floozies of the riverbank, for their tough rhizomes and delicate splayed petals open décolleté, for being local reps of the rainbow goddess, we cherish Blue Flag, also known as Iris, the messenger maiden who links earth and sky. For their blossoms like miniature white urns, for the bees they feed with nectar and fool into being vectors for pollen, for roots that finger their way across burnt lands and clear cuts, for shiny, many-toothed leaves that turn reddish come fall, but mostly for the blue-black berries, berries on the bush, in the emper, in the pail, in the jams, jellies, pies, cakes, pancakes, scones, flans, compost sauces. We cherished the blueberries, whose taste translates the barrens to the kitchen and the bog to the shed. May we always bear their stains on the knees of our jeans and their savor, I forgot to mention the muffins, on our talkative tongues.
I got microphone? Good. Well, welcome back, everyone. The band has graciously agreed to help me with this little demo that I'm going to do for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll be back to the second half of the show. I'm Dan Bosniak. I'm the technical director of the LiveLab, and as the sort of science snapshot tonight, I'm going to talk about the acoustics of the LiveLab. I'm not sure it's really a science snapshot as much as an engineering snapshot, but I'll throw a little physics in there maybe to satisfy the requirements. Unfortunately, those of you who are watching the live stream aren't going to get as much out of this perhaps as the people in the audience. We spent approximately $1 million extra on the construction of the LiveLab in order to get the acoustics the way they are, and so I encourage anyone who's watching who hasn't been here to come here. Maybe you guys could give us applause if you thought the sound was good in the first half. Anyone? Yeah, it was phenomenal, I thought. So what are acoustics exactly, if you're not in the know? Room acoustics, in this case, refers to the properties of a room that sort of determine how sound behaves inside of the room. And the factors that control acoustics are, the important factors are things like the size and the shape of the room, obviously, the materials that it's constructed out of, what's inside of the room, the furniture, and so on, things that absorb and reflect sound. And the acoustics have a great deal of effect on both how the audience perceives the music and enjoys it, but also how the musicians, I think, are able to perform. I think especially with the very low background noise levels in this room, for example, when you're doing those little pizzicato things, you can go a lot more quiet than you might in a sort of a noisier room. So the musicians probably use the dynamic range of the room a little bit more when it exists, right? So two things that we need to talk about when we're talking about the acoustics of the room. The first thing is what happens to sound generated outside of the room, and the second thing is what happens to sound generated inside of the room. So obviously sound that's generated outside of the room, like a bus driving by or whatever, we want to stop that from getting into the room. It's very straightforward. But sound, of course, is generated by some object, let's say the bus engine vibrating, and that vibration causes the air molecules to vibrate nearby, and that sort of transmits to other air molecules adjacent, kind of like ripples on the surface of a pond, right? So the air doesn't actually move from the engine to your ear, but the vibration moves through the air, even though the air is still. And that what's moving towards you is actually energy, of course. So when the sound energy hits a wall, you would expect maybe that it would be stopped because the air molecules can't vibrate other air molecules because there's a wall in the way. But what of course happens is that the wall starts to vibrate as well. And then when the wall vibrates, the air molecules on the other side of the wall vibrate, and then the process continues. There'll be some attenuation involved, but the wall can not totally stop the sound for the most part. So what we need to do with that outside sound is we need to either reflect it away or absorb it. If we reflect it, of course, we don't care what happens to it. What do we mean by absorb it, though? The first law of thermodynamics, as you know, the law of conservation of energy, says this sound energy can neither be created nor destroyed. I guess it's created somehow, but we can't destroy it according to this law, and we like to behave according to the law here at the LiveLab. But luckily, what we can do with energy is change the form of it, right, without violating this law. So just like this microphone, right, a little bit of the energy coming out of my mouth, the sound energy gets converted into electrical energy, it goes back to the back of the room, and then it comes out of the speakers, and then gets converted back into sound energy again. So it actually gets converted twice. If we want to absorb it, what we're gonna do is we're basically gonna turn that sound energy into heat energy using friction. Now the ability of a object or a surface or a wall to absorb energy is dependent on a couple of the frequency of the sound, for one thing. So really high frequencies, it's pretty easy to deal with those. Either they get reflected or they tend to be absorbed fairly easily. So like within the sort of porous, microporous structure of the surface, the sound energy gets turned into heat easily. But for lower frequencies, where the wavelength is really long in comparison to the size or the shape of the object, you get things like resonance, and you get the object actually vibrating according to the sound energy, and that's of course the problem. So, you know, one solution, of course, is we need a lot of mass in the object that's blocking the sound. So at the LiveLab here, the outer wall is actually solid concrete. So it's made out of concrete blocks, but the blocks are filled with concrete in those holes in the middle. So it's a very massy wall, and of course, what that means is although the wall still moves, it doesn't move very much because the amount of energy to move that wall is correspondingly so much greater. We're holding the energy constant, so the wall doesn't move very much. But that still doesn't totally, as we said, it doesn't totally block the sound. But then what we've done is actually constructed this outer shell, and then we've constructed another inner shell completely isolated from the outer shell on the inside of the room. So if you look around, there's a wall, and then there's an inside wall, and they don't touch each other. Similarly, the floor that you're below the panels you're sitting on, there's a concrete pad that's about 5 inches thick, and it's sitting on rubber springs, and then there's another concrete pad under it. And the ceiling, similarly, 2 layers. Everything's 2 layers, spring-loaded, so that the sound gets has to go through 2 barriers, and then the attenuation is much better. The energy doesn't get through; it sort of gets absorbed, trying to move these 2 surfaces independently. So then there's, you know, the sound locks at the doors, because the doors are the weak point. You know, they got little holes that maybe some sound could get through. So we always have 2 doors. Every entrance has at least 2 doors. And finally, I think the air conditioning system is quite special. It costs a lot of money. One of the things that makes a lot of noise in a normal room is the air conditioning, the heating and air conditioning. But in this case, the ducts are massive. There's all these things blowing air in and taking air out. So the air moves very, very slowly. And that's the key, right? Because more slow movement, less turbulence. And there's no dampers in there. So it's all designed to move the air. The air just sort of drifts in here. It doesn't get blown in. So, you know, if you blow air quickly, it can create turbulence, like in a whistle, right? But in our air conditioning system, it moves very slowly. And of course, the air conditioning motors are actually in a separate building. So that's how we handled that. Yeah. So why don't we listen to the result? So let's all just be quiet and listen to the background noise of the room. See what it's like. So it's pretty quiet. It's probably one of the quietest places you've been in, but it's actually kind of hard to tell because the sound that you're breathing and things like that is still coming into the room and reflecting around. So I'm going to adjust the system so that you can hear it even better. So first I'll show you how the sound reflects around in here. So I'm going to count to 1, 2, 3, and then everybody clap once at the same time. 1, 2, 3. All right, so you can hear the sound doesn't just go away. It sort of reflects around inside a little bit. So I'm going to change that. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can hear it. This is how the room actually sounds. So now there's nothing reflecting around. The sound is being absorbed immediately, and we can maybe hear. Let's close your eyes and listen to the room. I think it's actually kind of disconcerting to. So I'm gonna turn it on a little bit. This will go to like a sort of a pseudo classroom. It's a little uncanny because our mind actually unconsciously uses the reflections in the room just to determine how big the space is, right? So we sort of listen to how long it takes for the first reflection to come from some sound that we see being produced. So we see the sound being produced. Our brain picks up the reflection completely unconsciously as long as the time delay is short enough. Our brain just sort of integrates those two things and does this unconscious measurement of what the space is like, so we can sort of navigate around and we know we're inside. You know, the only time you hear none of those reflections is maybe when you're outside in a snow-covered field or whatever. So it's quite different. But
it makes me think of there are a couple of blind people. It started with one person, I'm sure you know about this, who's now echolocating like bats. And so this man makes these clicking sounds he can't see, but then he can actually see his space because of this. And now he's teaching other blind people to echolocate by exactly what you're explaining. So
yeah, I think especially if you train yourself to do so.
Yeah.
I've actually become a little more adept at hearing directionality because we've been working with so much with directionality in here. Let's. So we've got there's actually two parameters. So there's this time of the first reflection, and there's the sort of overall reverberation. And in this room, we can control both of these things. And how we do it is, I don't know if we need to bring the lights up or something, but there's actually 75 or so speakers all around you, and there's 28 microphones up in the ceiling there at different places. And what happens is, just like with a real reflection of sound, you know, we make a sound, it hits the microphones, it goes into the back, some computers deal with it, and then send it out to various speakers to sort of mimic the idea that this sound energy went up there and it got reflected and it came out with the appropriate time delay somewhere else. So that's how we do it, and now maybe we can demonstrate some different settings of that. Let's start with maybe a little viola, and we'll do this sort of, we'll go through like 4 or 5 different levels of reverberation in this case, which is how long it takes for the sound to die away. So just play a little thing with maybe a bit of air at the end, and we'll play it 4 times, maybe a couple bars long. Any. Okay, so that sounds pretty, I mean, not the playing, but the sound is quite terrible, right? Because there's basically no reverberation at all. It sounds completely dead. It's not good. So let's do it. So in this setting, the sound dies away within about a half a second. And so we'll change it to like the opposite extreme. We're going to go to a very long setting. Now the sound takes about 3 seconds to die away. We'll play the same thing and hear how it sounds. Is that better? Yeah. So you get that sense of envelopment, right? Like, so you know, you're hearing that I'm close to it, so I don't hear it as much. But the further away you are, the more the balance between the direct sound and the sound that's coming at you from around occurs. And of course, there's supposedly a sweet spot where the percentage of direct versus indirect sound is exactly right. I think most of the seats in here actually end up with that balance, so it's not like a big orchestra hall where there's only a few places that have that. I noticed though with the piano, that we'll do a little piano. I noticed with the piano it's not as obvious the difference because I think the piano sustains a little bit more. So let's play a couple bars of piano with this long setting and we'll go back to the short setting and see. right, and let's listen to that in a much shorter setting. See if we can tell the difference. So this one will go to like a 1 second. So I don't know what you guys think. I personally find the difference is not as obvious with the piano, but let's get finally to the clarinet, and we'll just illustrate this point that, you know, at first we may have thought, well, obviously absorbing everything is the best, but that's clearly not the case for music. We don't want to absorb everything. This envelopment is actually pleasant for whatever reason, but I think it can go too far. So maybe we'll go too far and try and play something maybe complicated on the clarinet, and we'll listen to it with so much reverb that perhaps
I'll play something articulated, because that really gets affected by the, yeah.
So
There's a test after. You have to know where that comes from in the piece.
So maybe that's a little too much. It's actually difficult to talk when it's like this, and similarly, it's maybe even be difficult to play because you're still hearing the last few notes while you're trying to play the next one. So there's always a little too much of anything, I think, we're illustrating here. So thank you guys very much for that. I'm going to go back to the concert hall setting, which is, well, maybe I'm just going to stay with no reverb for a few seconds and just demonstrate one other thing, and then I'll let you guys take over. Yeah, so one other thing that we can do, we've got all these speakers that are participating in this artificial reverberation. There's so many of them because we have to have a lot of speakers because we don't want you to hear the source of the sound exactly. So each speaker is quite low in volume, so you can't really localize it just coming from the speaker. But since we have so many speakers, we can actually insert sounds into the room and make it sort of move artificially by panning it amongst the different speakers. So in this case, we've got it says, we call it the fly, although it's actually the sound of a bee moving around the room. And it can come up here on the stage. Yeah, and that's a sort of a subtle one. We can do the same thing maybe on a slightly larger scale as well, similar idea. And that's actually, there's a path sort of drawn out on a computer screen, and with timing associated with it, we can control how long it takes to fly along the path. And finally, of course, we can create a sort of a soundscape or an ambiance by having multiple channels of sound, maybe something appropriate for tonight. So this kind of soundscape thing, we've done concerts where the soundscape was incorporated into the concert, you know, different sound settings for different songs, and you know, when we're in the tunnel in Paris or something, then the reverb went up, and so we have a lot of fun with it. It's really quite interesting to use it artistically as well as and we use it. Sorry, let me make it stop. All right. I'm going to go back to the concert hall for these guys, and I am basically done, except to say what we actually use this kind of thing for practically as well as artistically is we've done a lot of work with hearing aids, and so these sort of different acoustic environments have massive implications for how people hear of both speech and music with people with hearing impairment and hearing aids. So we do a lot of work in that area, which is really quite valuable for helping people. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to let you go back to
And here we come with all of our dirty dishes. We are actually going to do the drawing now for the free CD. And Zoe's going to help me because, as Don said, my Bulgarian accent is going to butcher all of your names. So
Beautifully, though, beautifully.
All right. And we have a winner. We have Colin. Just Colin. That's his email. I don't know if I'm going to announce that, but
Is there a column here?
do we have any Collins?
Yes.
Okay, there aren't multiple Collins, so I think we're good.
Great.
as long as they're not, yay!
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Yes, we'll stay in touch with all of you once a year.
Maybe twice.
Well, Dan's talk was a piece of brilliant intellectual integration, accidental brilliant integration, because Bird Island Suite is about avian acoustics, really. It's all about bird islands which surround Newfoundland. They're breeding islands and also islands where the birds die. So they're kind of intense concentrations of birth and death at the same time. It's almost like listening to an oracle, the voice of the earth in some ways. They're quite fascinating because for musicians and poets and probably for acoustic engineers, because it's hard to tell whether they're musical or just noisy, and both at the same time. And this piece addresses that interesting combination. It has 4 movements, and the first one is called Audience. It's not about you, so don't let it go to your heads. It's about the act of listening, the act of audience, like having an audience with the poet, and kind of a warm up for the other pieces. The second piece is called the Bird Island Cacophonic Choir, and it deals with this business of noise and music at the same time, and kind of like psychological acoustics. What you hear when you're listening to the Bird Islands are quite, I think it differs very much from person to person. And I remember at famous Cape St. Mary's gannet colony one time, I was coming away from the gannets, which are only about like 20 feet away from the shore, on this huge sea stack where they're nesting, thousands and thousands of gannets nesting. So you can imagine what that sounds like. Plus there's kittiwakes, plus there's raisinbills, plus there's murres, and so on. And I was walking up from there, and a woman was standing with her back to it. An elderly woman was standing to her back to it and her eyes closed. And I said, what are you hearing? She said, I'm hearing an antique prairie thrashing machine. I turned around and thought, oh. I tried it myself, and you could kind of get it, like that kind of noise in the background. And I thought, well, probably everybody hears something different in that. So this Bird Island Cacophonic Choir deals with that phenomenon. That piece will build, and this will build to a kind of crescendo with voice and music at the same time, me and things. So this is a tense moment for me because I have to come in the right place. And my average is around 73% at this point. What happens if I don't? Well, you notice that Zoe's carrying a stick, you know. Mostly that's for making music, so. And as we mentioned, Anna has a Bulgarian stare that will actually penetrate flesh. Like she has quite a good view from the piano, so behind the piano. So it's in my interest to get my average up in this. So wish me luck with that. That piece also asks if in this middle of this noise can we also hear the species that have already gone extinct, partly from our efforts. The third piece would be called the Adagio, or the slow movement. It's a song for the song of the great auk, which is extinct and has been extinct since 1848 at the latest. And of course, we're the authors of that extinction. How can we have a song for the song of the great auk? There's no recordings, no discs that Florian and I could listen to for that at all. So that's part of the question is, what did the great auk actually sound with? We have some historical descriptions, but that's it. And following that, the last movement is a movement for a wonderful species, the storm petrels, Leach's storm petrels. If you go to your dryer and take the lint and pack it in it like this, and then stick a button in it for an eye, you've got a storm petrel. They're very delicate and very tough at the same time. Everything eats them, and they live mostly, almost always at sea, and almost always mute. They only come ashore to breed on a nesting island, and they only sing at breeding when they come back home at night. And then, when they do, they celebrate being alive and being petrels. And it's like a kitchen party, like a Newfoundland kitchen party. Florian and I were lucky that we had a friend who had a bird biologist who sent us a link to a recording of Leach's storm petrels on Green Island, which is south of the Burin Peninsula and north of St. Pierre and Miquelon in there. And it's an island that's only inhabited by seabirds. And so Janet sent us this, and we listened to it a lot. And you'll probably hear through the piece some pre-echoes of that. And gradually, when we come to the song for the song of the bird of the Leach's storm petrel, you'll hear what Florian did at the ending of that to turn it into a Newfoundland reel, and you'll have one very busy violist beside me. So, I know I'm going to give you two renditions of the song of the Leach's storm petrel as they actually sound. Would you like to hear this? Yes, that's right. Sally McKay, would you like to hear this? Okay, that's good. That's the right answer. And now, because we have these wonderful acoustics here, I persuaded the trio to let me also play what Florian and I were listening to as this in composition. So, Hanny, can you give us now, with a wonderful acoustic, boost it up. Here they are. Okay, that's it. Thanks all for coming, though. Bird Island Suite 1. Audience, the state or condition of listening. We have parked, we have presented our tickets, located our seats, and settled. We hereby suspend desires and tell our devices to doze. Now we would be listening, capital L, attention-made mammal, at once snowshoe hare and fox. We would be audience, bums in seats and minds camping in our inner ears, doing yoga, poised. Will the first notes be as silence, dressed as sound, or noise, finding harmonies inside itself? We wait in the state or condition of sublime suspense. We're tuned, we're primed, we're audience. the Bird Island Cacophonic Choir. For some, it's a jungle. For others, a mob. I hear an antique threshing machine. You hear a whole kindergarten of kazoos. Often those ratchet trochees seem the voice of the unconscious running through its riffs. The args and growls and hoots and farts, trills, purrs, the many modes of squawk, with wistful whistles from the guillemots as grief notes in the general brouhaha. Sibley suggested puffins in the distance sound like chainsaws shifting pitch. But strenuous efforts in the bathroom may, to some of us, occur. You say, Babel boileth over. I say, dragons' recursive writhings. You say, oracle on overdrive. Fellow listeners, can we also hear the Eskimo curlew calling, key, key, key? The Labrador duck, the dodo. Is that the croak of an albatross trying to call across the toothbrush stuck in its throat? Could that be the long-gone great ox baritone groan? Song for the Song of the Great Auk. By 1848, you were extinct, so your voice enjoys no afterlife on tapes or discs. Gargle, one witness says. Low croaks, says another. Suppose we install our mental microphone among the silences of words where the waves crash, then sizzle, then recoil, then crash again, where the wind whistles endless improvs on mortality, where the razor bills, your closest kin, deliver nasal growls. Hey, Al, says Peterson, like bad-tempered bassoons. Suppose we take your voice half an octave lower, feral foghorn, polar bear, and open up the vowels. How all. Are we even close? In imagination, we are forever disembarking on the funks, where you're still standing, still dressed as bridegrooms, still not fleeing as we clamber, part pilgrim, part predator, up the slippery, whitewashed rock toward you. Song for the Song of the Leech's Storm Petrel, also known as Mother Carey's Chickens. Fluffy and tough, with the tensile strength of spider web, they spend their lives at sea, silent, pitter-pattering the waves, not quite flying, not quite walking on the water, coaxing the ocean to cough up plankton and crustaceans. Even their haven is unsafe. A burrow at the cliff edge lined with shredded raffle tickets and eviction notices, where they raise one chick per year, staying invisible and mute. It's only under cover of dusk that, having dipsy-doodled past their many predators, the petrels cackle into knocked music. Chuckly chatter, it's been called, crooning and trilling, musical purring, and my dear, the wind, the waves, the friggin' oil rigs, and those black-back shaggers just waiting by the bureau. Let me tell you, darling, it's got me drove. And anyway, how are you all the time? Sing to us, Mother Carey's chickens, of flux, of living next to nothing, of pluck. Croon, trill, cackle the mysteries of lift and drag and load, chatter our battered hearts through the dark.
Wow, that was amazing, I thought, yeah. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I hope you enjoyed the little demo of the acoustics as well. Please join us for our upcoming concerts. We've got a research concert with Nesquik in March. They're a sort of a jazz fusion improvisation band. And Sunday afternoon in April, we've got Addie Braun returning for a third time. And she always brings us something interesting. I can't remember what this one is, but I'm sure it will be great. So visit livelab.mcmaster.ca for more details and tickets. So thank you all for coming.